Hey, everybody, welcome to Love and Reload, the voice of the relocation industry. I am your host, Ben Cross, and I'm here live with Angelo Paparelli from Vialto. How are you, Angelo?
I'm great. How are you, Ben? Looking
Oh, it's
forward
good.
to it.
Hey, I'm looking forward to talking to you today as well. We're here in studio today. Adam, super producer Adam, had the day off today. He's traveling, so give us some grace out there. We're trying to do everything today on our own here. But get in the comments. I want to hear from you out there. Check in with us. Let us know who you are, where you are, what you're up to. If you've got questions about immigration happenings right now, let us know. I also want to hear Angelo's story. Angelo's kind of one of the luminaries and influencers kind of in the immigration space. So I want to hear his perspective. Looking forward to hear his story. But first and foremost, Angelo, where are you today? You look like you're caught in the Matrix. Where
I
are
am
you?
in Studio City, California, on top of a hill looking out across Laurel Canyon Boulevard.
Studio City. Are you at the Merv Griffin Studios? Where are you, Angelo?
No, I'm near there, but I'm in my private residence.
Oh, very nice. Very cool. Very cool. Yeah. How's the weather out there in LA? It's still hot out here in Texas.
It's beautiful, 75, sunny. Can't beat it.
Oh, like good SoCal weather. That's awesome. Getting in the comments here. Let's see here what we got going on. We got 8 million things cooking here. Very cool. All right. And now, Angelo, I hear originally you're from Detroit. Is that right?
I am. Grew up in the inner city. Uh, Had a great time there. Lots of excitement and turmoil at times, but it gave me resilience.
So before I moved to Dallas, I was living in Detroit for about 5 years, outside of Detroit, not inner city Detroit, but outside of Detroit, and I kind of got a taste for it. But what was that like growing up back there in Detroit? I'm really curious about kind of the old days back then.
Well, I lived off of a major street, Gratiot Avenue, and
Yeah.
on that street, on one side was a row of homes, and on the other side was a commercial building. The commercial building was owned by my grandmother, and she started a catering business known as the Roma Halls. And the family lived on the other side of the street, as did my mother's side of the family. So both mom and dad and extended cousins and uncles and aunts lived all together. It was a neighborhood that was predominantly African American, but there were a large segment of Polish citizens and or people from Poland, and I should say, and Italians, and we all got along. We just had a great time. It was very different from my later years living in a suburb of Detroit. So I actually missed the excitement, the thrill of the Roma Halls.
About what time period was that that you're describing for us?
It would have been between 1950 and 1967,
Yeah,
just a
because
year
after
before the Detroit riots.
right, yeah, after that, a lot of turmoil happened. The Detroit
Yeah.
riots happened, and there was a lot of change in the
Mhm.
city.
But Detroit's a great city. The people there are very, very vibrant and creative, and I miss going back. I do go back from time to time, but usually they're funeral tours. But
Mm.
that's another conversation.
You talk about the Polish influence in Detroit too, and I fell in love with the punchki donut.
Uh-huh.
There, right? So punchki day, which is also kind of like Fat Tuesday, if you will, right? And everybody would go
Yes,
down to the Gratiot area or to oh gosh, what was that
Hamtramck.
other Hamtramck area? Yes, and they would stand in line early in the morning for these fresh baked punch, which are just like kind of like jelly filled or cream filled donuts,
Hmm.
but they're so good.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Hamtramck is an interesting town because it's encircled by Detroit. It's a city inside a city, and it's become heavily Arab American, so it shows the vibrancy of the immigrant community in Detroit.
Yeah, I love it. I really did enjoy my time in Detroit. We got people checking in here. Danny checking in from New Jersey. Yeah, he says really interested in learning more about the work you do with Vialto partners. Yeah, we're gonna
Happy to
get to
do
that
that.
for sure, for sure. Annie Ream checking in. What's up, Annie? here from the Global HQ office. Thank you, Annie, for checking in. Appreciate you. Get in the comments. I want to hear what you have, what questions you have for Angelo. But Danny's asking about the Vialto angle here, and we got some more questions. Gabby's coming in. So why don't you bring us up to speed here? Flash forward from eating punchkis down in Gratiot to now you're with Vialto Partners.
Well,
what's happened in the interim there?
I'll give you the abbreviated version. I went to Wayne Law School, which is an inner city law school in Detroit, a University of Michigan undergrad. And after graduating, I did a 2-year stint with the Michigan Court of Appeals, ghostwriting legal opinions for Judge Dorothy Riley, and who later became the Chief Justice of the state. But I wanted to see the world, and I thought, what better way to see the world than to become an international business and tax lawyer? And to my surprise, that didn't work. I found a job in that field with a reputable small firm in Detroit. Their senior partner was German, and he brought in a lot of international clients, but I found myself chained to my desk. Yeah. And I was quite glum and thinking maybe law was not the right career for me. But he came in one day and he said, I've got this brochure for a conference in Puerto Rico to learn about immigration law. And I said, well, winter in Detroit, Puerto Rico, I'm happy to go there. And little known fact, at the time, the organization was known as AINL, the Association of Immigration and Nationality Lawyers. But when you pronounce it, it has a definite oppressive pronunciation. So they eventually became the American Immigration Lawyers Association. And I went there and I met lawyers who were having a great time. And they were telling me about how they will and working with clients from all over the world. And in fact, I did end up becoming an immigration lawyer really from that conference. And I've traveled pretty much all over the world as a result. So I got my dream. But it came to be that life in Detroit did not offer that many opportunities for an immigration lawyer. And I decided to go to the entertainment capital of the world, Hollywood, LA, and I began practicing. It was a struggle at first. I joined one big firm, and then I switched to another big firm. Then I opened up my own boutique firm, which grew to have 15 lawyers, known as Paparelli and Partners. And then I joined another firm, and I stayed at this last firm for 13 years. And then at the beginning of June, I joined Vialto Partners. And so I've had a lot of experience with the delivery of immigration legal services at a high level for clients very large and some small. And yet the opportunity to work with Vialto Partners was irresistible. It is doing something different than I've ever experienced before. And I'm sure we'll talk about that, but I don't want to co-opt all of your questions.
Hey, listen, Angelo, this is your party. If you want to lead the show, I mean, feel free to go ahead. I mean, you're doing great already. You nailed some really great jokes already here. We got people laughing in studio here. So this is great. I'm enjoying this thoroughly. I do want to hear about how you go from having your own, Paparelli law firm, with 15 folks working there. Because that's quite an accomplishment in and of itself, to get to a firm of that size, and then to make the decision to start that firm, but then to move on from there. I'm really curious as an entrepreneur myself, what made you do that?
Well, the firm before I formed my firm was a great firm, and it had wonderful lawyers. One of them was Roxana Bacon, who became ultimately the chief counsel for USCIS under the Obama administration. But I saw the tech revolution pass before my eyes, and I realized that the firm I had been in was not really ready to embrace technology in the way that I thought it could be done rather inexpensively, even in those days. This was I think it was 1999. And so I decided we had good clients, and the clients were loyal, and I landed on my feet with a firm at that point, initially with 3 lawyers and about 6 staff, and we grew to 15 lawyers and about 35 in total.
Wow.
And riding the technology wave, immigration was in high demand for the importation of tech workers and their families, and then the 2008 recession arose, and tech wasn't as strong as it was before. And I said, I better find myself a new platform. And because I had been in large firms before, I knew what to expect. And I was welcome with open arms, and I thrived at the previous firm. The experience was really as satisfactory and reassuring as it could be. But then I bumped into a woman at the American Immigration Lawyers Association annual conference in New York. And her name is Sheila Snyder. And it turns out that 20 years earlier, Sheila was practicing out of Washington, D.C., and was an associate with a lawyer. That lawyer called me up and asked me a question about immigration law that was new to her. And as I was about to answer it, she said, do you mind if I put my associate on the phone? And so Sheila was on the speakerphone, and I was as well. And I answered the question. And that began a connection that endured. And so I bumped into Sheila at the annual conference 2 years ago. And we quickly realized that there was an opportunity for me, if I wanted it, at Vialto. And that was because Vialto had made a commitment to open up a U.S. law firm in the United States. Up until that time, Vialto had been practicing U.S. immigration law by attracting U.S. lawyers to move to Canada. And they had succeeded. And they had, at that point, already employed some 35 lawyers, American practicing lawyers, delivering immigration services from Canada. And they are already the 4th largest provider of perm labor certification cases in the nation, according to DOL statistics. And so I was excited about that because I had heard about the spinoff from PwC.
Right.
And I'd heard the eye-popping amount, the $2.2 billion was the purchase price. And I said, that's something new and different. And I had been an admirer of what accounting firms were doing in going into the consulting field over several years and really doing things at a sophisticated high level. I had one major consulting client that taught me quite a bit about how to deliver top-notch services. And so I felt I was ready for a change. And to be the on-the-ground initial partner of Vialto Law in the U.S., and to grow the business from a U.S. Platform beyond and in tandem with my friends in Canada, in Vancouver and Toronto, it sounded exciting. It sounded like something I would really enjoy as the next stage of my career.
It does sound exciting. It sounds like a quite a challenge. Leave your questions for Angelo in the comments. I see questions from Gabby. I see Sylvie. Shout out to Ray Abbott coming to us from Vancouver here. Annie wants to hear more about Vialto. We're going to hear, I'm going to stay on this track with Vialto and kind of what your strategy is right now. And then I'm going to get to these other questions. So if you have questions for Angelo, please leave them in there. We will prioritize your questions here. Just want to stay on this thread for a second here. So you're talking about standing up this US-based immigration practice with Vialto. It does sound indeed exciting. We've all kind of been a party to the growth that's going on and kind of seeing what's going on out there and the posts and all the people that are kind of obviously transitioning over from PwC, and just it's very interesting from an outsider's perspective looking in. What kind of is the strategy, and I guess really more so maybe what is the biggest challenge you're facing in doing that? Because I mean it's kind of a startup, but it's kind of a mature organization. It's kind of interesting.
It's a little bit of everything. It was just a few months ago that Vialto enjoyed its 1-year anniversary apart from PwC. It spun off its global tax, mobility, and immigration practice, and is now a freestanding organization that is really a pure play in terms of no other organization that I'm aware of has that depth of expertise and is not sometimes distracted by other areas of consulting practice or accounting practice. And so what we are endeavoring to do is to make available through some 7,000 personnel worldwide a comprehensive, cohesive solution to the challenges that global mobility leaders face in today's very politically topsy-turvy world, where economic factors are also quite turbulent. So what we've seen is that the current way of delivering these mobility, immigration, and tax services elsewhere is that oftentimes purchasers of these services have to knit together networks of different vendors in different spaces. And what we are endeavoring to do is to have a single technological platform that avoids, for example, having to ask the same information twice, depending on which particular service provider is asking the question. We only ask the number of the passport for the particular individual once, and it stays in the system and is accessible. We have a comprehensive digital desktop that every employer and every assignee who is traveling to a new country can access in real time, and do it in a way that allows for technology to do the work, while we are really more focused on the employee experience and the experience of the relocation professional within the organization. We want to be able to provide services in tandem with some strategic partners that are a different level of service, avoiding the fragmentation that we've seen with data in disparate, disconnected repositories of data, depending upon which vendor is being used. So we want to make it a holistic delivery of a service that didn't exist. And we recently did a survey and found that the kinds of needs that are asked by mobility leaders in companies today are far more sophisticated. How do we upskill? How do we get a voice in the C-suite when strategic decisions are made about talent acquisition, talent retention, talent deployment? So these are the kinds of things that I'm finding to be a lot of fun. I'm glad that I started out as a tax lawyer because I'm rubbing elbows with a lot of tax professionals and I can speak their language. Just as an example of an area where it becomes really important is the so-called business traveler phenomenon, where people are going not necessarily from or to the US, but from country A to country B to country C and spending time there. And that creates payroll tax risks, that creates risks of permanent establishment tax exposure. And it also creates immigration problems if people are entering on a tourist visa and working from a country where that's not allowed, even though they're just dialing back into their server in their home country and accessing email. But the point is, we can do that from a single database, and we can provide a holistic experience for our clients in that way.
Sure. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And being vertically integrated like that with all those different verticals, helps tremendously. I'm sure. I want to come back to this because I do want to talk about the future of the global mobility industry, where it's headed, because I think that what you are talking about is really, your fingers on the pulse of where this whole thing is going. But I also want to honor the questions of the people who are kind of tuning in here. So get in the comments here. I want to know your questions for Angelo. Hit that like button. I know we got people here watching here. I want to get to these questions. We'll go first as first. Gabby, love Gabby Bachhuber, always tunes in for the immigration stuff.
We're
Gabby's
connected on LinkedIn. Hello, Gabby.
Gabby's amazing. She's a treasure. She says, question. Well, first, we got two questions in here. I want to know first and foremost about the comments on the new G28. She's a fan of your comments on this. I want to hear for the audience,
sure.
kind of help us.
Well, the G28 is a USCIS, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services form that allows a lawyer to enter a notice of appearance in a particular immigration benefit request, a work visa, a green card, citizenship, whatever it may be. And recently, the agency announced that they were going to introduce an innovation whereby if an appointment for an individual non-citizen needs to be rescheduled, or there's some snag in the case and a phone call to the USCIS customer representative 800 number might solve the problem. Up until that point, the lawyer had to be on the line. This innovation will allow the agency under lawyer supervision to interact with a paralegal who can do an appointment rescheduling. So on its face, it was a pretty good introduction of a time-saving, labor-saving, fee-lowering exercise, because the rate, whether it's flat fee or hourly for a paralegal, is less than for a lawyer. And so the client benefits because the lawyer can be directing his or her time toward providing advice and counsel, helping in other ways to get the case prepared and filed. Well, I thought of this as an issue that might be an open door to persuade the agency that it should do a few other things with the G28, that notice. One is that instead of having a single form with one lawyer, and if there's another lawyer that needs to step in because the other is on vacation or is ill or has left the firm and has to submit a new form, why not have the form allow for multiple lawyers to be named? We used to be doing that when it was a one-page form, and it worked fine. So that's one thing. But the more important thing for me is the possibility and the reality that conflicts of interest can arise between the individual who is seeking the immigration benefit and the company that is sponsoring that individual for the benefit. And
what type of conflict might that be?
Oh, very easy. You get a call from HR representative saying, we're going to be having a reduction in force and we're going to let go of 20 employees, including this one who you're representing. But don't tell that person because it's not been announced yet. Well, a lawyer has an obligation to share with a client material information that is relevant to the purpose for which he or she is engaged.
Who, and pardon my ignorance here, but who is the client? Is it the corporation who hired you, or is it
the way the government makes it work is that in many instances, the lawyer is forced to be an attorney for both clients, employer and employee. The other situation that comes up is the employee calls the lawyer and says, hey, I got a better job offer. I'm quitting. When is my green card coming in? And now I have to share that with the corporation that's employing this individual. So I like to sleep comfortably at night. I don't like to worry that I am somehow going to be accused of ethical violations or malpractice because I get in the crossfire of a dispute. And so I have adopted a system, and this is something that is evolutionary because clients have a choice. It is possible to represent both parties with waivers and disclosures and everything, but it's not very easy. And so I've adopted a system where if I'm going to interact with the federal government, I want to be the representative for the employer only. The problem is that the agency has certain forms where they don't let a corporate party have representation. So that typically arises in the green card context. The applicant for a green card, that benefit is known as adjustment of status, is the individual and the family members. And the company has no voice in that proceeding, even though they're paying for it, even though they got the initial employment-based immigrant visa petition approved, they have no voice. And that's not appropriate because there are times when the government wants financial information from the employer, and they may want it explained by the individual who's not very articulate in describing complex financial transactions. And so what I've recommended that the USCIS do is that they allow for a concept known as limited appearance before the agency. And I believe that the American Immigration Lawyers Association has also submitted a comment that makes the same point, that we can help the individual file the forms, but we're not their lawyer. They get that benefit as a fringe benefit of employment. But we're the lawyer for the company and we represent the company's interests. But the individual always has the right to have his or her own lawyer. So what it would require would be that the agency has to mail out notices to two lawyers instead of one lawyer. So it's not a big change from a logistical perspective, but it will, I think, help to avoid conflicts of interest because everyone wants the undivided loyalty of their client. They want that fiduciary duty only to them. And so I think it's a beneficial outcome.
Would most individuals elect to have a lawyer in addition to the one provided by their company?
Rarely. Well, they make an assessment as to whether the one provided, whether it's the lawyer for only the company or the lawyer for both parties, is competent. And if they make that assessment, they're usually comfortable. I mean, in 99% of the cases, there are no conflicts. And therefore, the individual is getting a free ride. They're not paying for the lawyer, but they're getting the benefit of a good lawyer.
Right. But now, if they don't elect to have a lawyer in that situation, then I guess the two notices wouldn't be mailed out, or they'd be self-representing themselves.
Well, the agency has a provision. If there's no lawyer on the case, they will mail all correspondence to the individual, and the individual would be representing themselves. But by the time it gets filed, a good lawyer will have vetted whether there are any skeletons in the closet, whether there are any ineligibilities to get a green card. And those all have been worked out. And there are instances where people have, for example, some ground of inadmissibility or ineligibility, perhaps a criminal conviction, perhaps a drug possession, and that is where they should have their own lawyer anyway.
Okay, this is interesting. We could go down the rabbit hole on this one for a
sorry,
while.
I'm
No, this is good. I like it though, and this is for our immigration folks out there that like to get deep on this stuff. I know Gabby does. Gabby's got another question we're going to come back to here as well. Sylvie says, "Hi Ben and Angelo, I'm joining from New Jersey. My question: what would you recommend for a global professional to become more of an expert or being more knowledgeable in U.S. immigration?"
Well, that's a challenge because let me give you a little background about the immigration law in the United States. It was passed in 1952, and it's been amended several times since then. And it is the product of political compromise. And as a result, the era in which it was passed was the McCarthy era, when there was fear of communism. So it is structured.
So you're telling me today's U.S. immigration law is rooted in the McCarthy era of politics here in the U.S.?
Yes. Now, there have been changes, but the fundamental structure is the same. In fact, President Truman didn't like this structure and he vetoed it, but the Congress overrode his veto.
Wow.
And so,
because if they didn't, they were communists. So they had to override it, right?
Well, I don't know if Ed Murrow had destroyed Senator McCarthy at that point or not. But the point I would make is that they set up a two-stage review process. There's a consular officer outside the U.S. that issues the visa or refuses it. There is a border inspector at the port of entry who admits the person or refuses admission. Neither of those two officers is obliged to follow the viewpoint of the other. And there are a few other things about immigration law that make it really challenging. The consular officer is viewed as the supreme authority, cannot be overruled by the President of the United States, the Secretary of State, on questions of fact. If the consular officer looks you in the eye and says, I don't think you're going to leave the United States, even though you want a temporary visa, you're not getting in. And that's a fact question.
So the president can't come out there and start arguing balls and strikes and tell them, no, you actually.
There are some things that can be done. The president can fire the consular officer and put a new one in, and then that one reaches his own decision. But that doesn't happen very often. And my point is that you never know how it's going to play out. And it's structurally unjust in the way it was created, because there's no right to a lawyer at a visa interview, and there's no right to a lawyer at the border. And so you're dealing with part politics, part psychology, part law. And so to master immigration law requires you to do a lot of reading and listening. Now, fortunately, the USCIS puts out a fair amount of information, as does the State Department, as does the third agency with authority, the Department of Labor. So some of that can be mastered just by reading. But really, what is best is to attend seminars and conferences, or to befriend an immigration lawyer who's talkative like myself, and will be happy to explain anything that people want to know.
Everybody connect with Angelo.
My phone number is unlisted though, so.
There we go. So there's a lot of information out there, Sylvie, to Angelo's point, it looks like. But Angelo, if you had to pick one area, I don't want to say shortcut because there aren't any shortcuts in life, but what is the most valuable resource for information out there that folks can access in order to really level up their immigration knowledge?
I wish I could say there was one resource. If you're a lawyer, you should probably join the American Immigration Lawyers Association, because that will give you quite a bit. If you're in HR, you should probably join SHRM. That will give you a fair amount of resource. Or if your company is part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, that will give you very good resources on immigration. It depends on your interest. There are also a variety of not-for-profit pro bono organizations out there that will help people with modest means to solve their problem. But it isn't easy, and it's never been easy, because functionally the system is broken, and it is moving forward with the force of inertia, but without any kind of enlightenment on the part of our congressional leaders. And so nothing gets passed. That leaves the administrative agencies to do their own thing. And ironically, because I've been in a number of government meetings, these officers don't often like each other, don't often see eye to eye with each other and how they interpret it. So the immigration lawyer is forced to be the synthesizer, the interpreter of what these three agencies are saying and how to navigate through the maze.
This is really interesting stuff. We've got another question coming in, and get those questions in the comments here. Adrian, I see you. Mike Quigley, you're tardy. It's okay. We'll mark it in the book. Let's see here. Gabby's actually got, okay, she had a two-part question, so I want to come back to this. So we've talked about knowledge. So Sylvie asked, what knowledge? Where do I get knowledge in immigration? But Gabby's question is a touch different. It's asking about skills. She says, what is the best skill to learn now for someone who loves immigration and wants to grow in this field? Asking for me. She's not a lawyer. So what is the best skill?
I would distinguish between the technical, substantive area of law. There are resources to learn that. There are courses galore. But the actual ability to succeed in immigration law requires a basic understanding of human nature and human psychology. Bear in mind that we don't any longer see face to face the officers who are deciding the cases. They are behind a wall of technology, a wall of security at embassies and consular posts and at government offices. And so we never know what we're going to, whether what we're going to submit is going to resonate with a particular officer. A significant segment of immigration officers are former military and police. And so you could get someone who doesn't really like the immigration system and sees themselves as the safeguard against unworthy people coming into the country. On the other hand, you could get some people that are very sympathetic, very fair, very open-minded. And I've met the gamut of these types of people. And so you don't know who you're going to respond to, and you don't know what reaction they're going to be. And unfortunately or fortunately, they never explain to you whether they liked what you said or not. They either give you the benefit or they don't give you the benefit, or they ask for more information and then they either deny or grant the benefit. And so you're sort of punching in the dark, not knowing whether what you say or do is going to resonate. And so in my experience, I try to treat everyone, whether I'm dealing with immigration or not, with respect, because they're a human being, they're deserving of respect inherently. But I don't let them push me around either. And so the art of psychology comes in to say, how do you communicate that you know what you're doing and you're not asking for something to which you're not entitled? So this is a deserving request. How do you decide what level of evidence and how it's presented to reach a positive answer? Now, the other part of this is you don't know what they read when you submit a file that may be, this thick.
Right.
And so you have to figure out how to present it in a way that will let a busy officer reach the answer you want, which is yes, as soon as possible. And so it's really about psychology. It's about presentation to some degree. It's about design. And, there are some facts you really want to highlight, so you might get your yellow highlighter out, even though that's not the normal way of writing letters, and just highlight the most important points.
It almost seems like persuasive writing is quite important as well, right? And understanding, from even a sales standpoint, what bullet points are we trying to really call out here and put front and center? Like, say in journalism, don't bury the lead, right? Like, what are we trying to really put at the top of the pile here? It's so interesting you said, and then you brought up such an interesting point about the biases. We're human beings, right? We all have these, inherent kind of biases, whether we're aware of them or not, right? And you bring up the fact that these individuals approving, these are disapproving, these are individuals, and they have biases like everyone else. Have you seen any data, or do you know if data is kept on the approval rates by the agent that's reviewing them?
Actually, that's a very good point, and that they do not. If you go in front of a judge, the judge's name, and you get a decision with the judge signing the decision at the end. If you go in front of an immigration officer in the federal government or offshore at a consular post, you won't get the name of the person. And the ombudsman to USCIS recently noted this because there had been a very high level of requests for evidence that many thought were unjustified or were excessive. And so they undertook a study of a particular visa category known as the L1, which is the intra-company transferee, an important business category. And they realized that a number of the requests for evidence were issued by the same officer. So they have proposed that each officer get an identifying number so they could at least study patterns of, do we have someone who's way off the ledge on what they're asking for and maybe needs to be counseled or maybe needs to be exited from the organization because they're not applying the law fairly. We still don't have that. And even in the administrative law area, if you get in front of an immigration judge for a deportation hearing, you're going to know the judge's name.
Right.
If you
And
go
that
in
judge has a
front,
record. That judge has a record.
yes,
The lawyer, the prosecutor, they all have records, right?
right.
And you
In
can look
fact,
it up.
there's an organization called TRAC that publishes, one of the universities publishes data on immigration judges. And so you can know the asylum approval or denial rate of any immigration judge in the country, but you don't get to know the name or the pattern of a particular officer. There was a time when they would require the officers to put a number down, and we got to know that Officer 1507 was a real nut, a real hardball, but they don't do that anymore either. So we're sort of, again, it's all psychology.
Well, and when you look at government, a big movement for transparency has been going on for the last, I don't know, 20 years. And you have requests for information, the federal, information, acts and everything like that.
Information Act, yeah.
FOIA, yeah, right. And so, but then whenever I see a lack of transparency, almost by design, it really gets your spidey senses up, right? And you're kind of wondering, wait, what's afoot here? What's really going on here? So that's something I'm glad that people are actually talking about that. We got some more questions coming in here as well. We got Adrian here. Adrian's a recruiter in this space, and he says, what is the biggest challenge in finding and recruiting expat tax professionals? And I would even add to that, maybe immigration professionals. What do you see the biggest challenge being, Angelo?
I can answer it on both disciplines, subject matter disciplines. Expat tax is not a simple area because it involves typically the taxation regime in the country of nationality and the country of physical residence and the country of physical temporary presence.
So 3 countries potentially.
Beyond that, many countries have treaties. So the U.S. has tax treaties that resolve income tax treaties that resolve estate tax issues, and totalization agreements, which are Social Security treaties with foreign countries. Not every country has a treaty with the U.S. So a tax professional has to look at, is there a treaty? Does it cover income tax? Does it cover Social Security? Does it cover estate planning estate tax issues? And it may be so, it may not be so. But how many domains of tax regulation can one person know? So it necessarily involves the identification of country-specific experts or experts that have a few countries under their belt. And then you, as we have done in Vialto, you can stitch together a worldwide global network of these professionals so that they can talk to each other. Interestingly, if you go to your basic U.S. Accountant who does your taxes, if you don't use TurboTax, that person probably won't know anything about these issues. And so it's not just any accountant that will do. It's got to be someone who's got that subject matter expertise across a number of jurisdictions. In terms of immigration law, it's similar. Each country has the right of sovereignty to decide who they will allow in, who they will exclude, and under what conditions and terms. Some countries require that be done with a lawyer. Other countries allow a so-called accredited representative to be involved, a non-lawyer. And inevitably, the laws don't say the same. They change all the time, so that you have to have someone that really dedicates oneself to that particular area. And how you recruit them is the usual way of recruiting. The higher the salary, the better the benefits, the greater likelihood you're going to find someone.
Yeah. Does money still talk? Is money still the number one factor in this area?
I can't speak for tax professionals, so I'm not going to say that.
Yeah. Okay. All right. It's
I
funny
imagine
how we.
money does sway an occasional immigration lawyer.
Yeah, yeah, that's funny. Well, because there's this big, talk about work-life balance. There's big talk about culture, and there's big
Right.
talk about all these things. But I mean, studies that we've seen, 67% of folks still do put the compensation, monetary compensation, at the top of the list. So and I think it's one of those things. If you don't have it, you're looking for it, right? So if you have money and you have a bad situation, you might be looking for culture or flexibility. But if you have culture and flexibility, there's no replacing, compensation either, right? It's like, so we've got some more questions coming. I got a question for you too, right? So we've been hearing a lot in the news about this whole Canada and India thing, right? How
Right.
much of an impact how big of a deal is this? And how do you think it's going to impact U.S. immigration?
Well, I read about that with some fascination, and I can't get into the actual facts of whether the Indian government is somehow culpable and violated a Canadian law, or I don't want to get into any of that. But obviously, the two countries are not on the best of terms, and this happens. It happens quite a bit. The U.S. and Iran are not on the best of terms, and so there are a whole layer of laws that restrict the entry and the issuance of visas to individuals of the opposite country. But in the case of Canada, I don't know if you recall, but a few months ago, Canada announced a method of luring H-1B visa workers into Canada under a tech talent initiative. And
Exactly.
um, and that's wonderful, except many of these people may be citizens of India.
Of
And
course.
so are they going to continue? Well, first, it's not clear that Canada is in fact restricting Indian citizens. But if there is a tit for tat retaliation, that's the kind of thing that happens. I worked on cases at the dawn of the Iranian Revolution where Jimmy Carter had announced that people from Iran outside the U.S. Could not enter the U.S. And unless there were extraordinary circumstances, and that carries on to this day.
Well, yeah, it's interesting to me because it felt like, it felt like Canada was really positioning themselves as the number one destination for, the world's best talent, at a
Mhm.
time when we were posturing on, the US was sending mixed messages. I'll say that was sending mixed messages
That's
to
a
the world,
diplomatic
right?
way of putting it. Yeah.
And India being probably like one of the top sources, origins for talent, right? It was, I mean, they were at the middle of this, right? And so Canada was doing such a great PR job of saying, hey, welcome over here, come on over. And well, we were kind of sending mixed messages. And then people started parking people over there and all sorts of stuff, waiting for approvals and everything. And now, I mean, I know friends, friends and colleagues and even in the global mobility and moving relocation industry who are even supposed to go to Toronto for a conference in October, who are questioning how welcome they are and how safe it is for them, right? So we talk about PR and perception, right? And all of a
Mhm.
sudden it seems like almost a 180 where now maybe, does the US get to take advantage of this PR issue that Canada is having? And do we get to regain the spot as the number one destination? Because
Well,
I heard somebody speak, recently, Parag Khan, Dr. Parag Khan, who I respect, immensely. He spoke at the 11 Relo 500 and made it known to everyone that Canada has actually usurped the United States as the number one destination for immigrants worldwide. And I wonder if we might be able to take the pole position back.
well, we wouldn't do it if we by design, because we don't have our act together. We don't have comprehensive immigration law. We haven't solved the border crisis. We haven't solved the skills shortage crisis. And we're about to shut down a government unless things get turned around very
Okay,
quickly.
all that withstanding, does it look bright for us though? I mean,
Oh, I'm an
all that
optimist. Yes,
withstanding.
there are plenty of opportunities. I mean, I'm still in this business after all these years, so I'm an optimist. It'll somehow we will muddle through.
But besides the fact that we tripped over ourselves and rolled down the hill, I mean, do we still have a chance, Angelo? That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's fun. It's good to suppose though, and to play these things out. Sylvie has a question here. Sylvie says, and get those questions there. We have time for one or two more. Put in the comments if you got it. Sylvie says, what is the biggest challenges that immigration experts are facing right now, Angelo?
Well, I think it's not a new challenge, but it's something I referred to, and that is that we've got multiple agencies with multiple internal problems. Their tech is outdated at the government agencies. They don't want to talk to sophisticated tech providers outside of the government because they'll be feared to face accusations that they're favoring one company over another company. And so I would say tech is one of the biggest challenges right now. Recently, the Department of Labor decided to change a form, and that form is at the centerpiece of green cards in the U.S. It's the PERM Labor Certification Form 9089, and they completely revamped their technology with very little outreach to the stakeholder community. And all of a sudden, they're asking for new information that they never asked for before. They're deleting information that they said was important before, but it's not there anymore. The forms have limited amounts of character entry in the data fields, so you can't really explain yourself. I would say most immigration lawyers are pulling their hair out, or in my case, what little is left, in being frustrated over the government's forms. I mean, I'll give you an example. The USCIS has a form, a process called My USCIS. Establish an account and then see what's happening in my clients' cases in terms of have they been received? Are they being processed? What is the stage? All well and good. Now, I didn't know that my former secretary, this at my former firm, but my secretary had included my middle name, Alfred, on all of my forms. And when I registered, I just used my first and my last name. And I can't get them to fix that. I can't get any of my clients' names on the database because there's nobody named Angelo Paparelli in existence that's filing these G28 forms that I mentioned. I mean, it's just crazy. And then tech support is non-existent. So I would say that's probably it. But the perennial problem of the agencies not getting along with each other, issuing inconsistent rulings, that's still there. The anonymity of the adjudicators, that's still there. The McCarthy era consular decision versus border inspector decision, that's still there. So there are quite a number of big challenges. Let me just add one thing. But the point is, this is about strivers trying to make it in another country. This is about a courageous population of people who have said, we're going to do better, either for ourselves or our kids. And we're going to go to another country where we think there's greater opportunity. Right. Now, when you win a case for a person, that's almost an endorphin rush for most of us immigration lawyers, because especially if it was a hard case and it looked as if the odds were against them. I'll tell you, I have on Facebook, he's now about 15 years old, but a kid whose middle name is Angelo because I won a case for his mother. Wow. And when I see pictures of the mother posting this kid's photo at different stages of his educational career or family parties, I get a thrill. I mean, you can't do better than that. So that's why I like this.
That's awesome. That's a great story. Angelo, Alfred, Paparelli.
It's actually Alfredo, but
Alfredo, even better. Alfredo. I love it.
But don't shorten it. I'll sound like one of the sons.
Fredo. Yeah, you're the bad son, right? The bad son. You don't want to be the bad son. You want to be Fredo. You want to be Michael. Anyway, this has been great. Angelo, we got a couple minutes here. You want to play a quick game with me?
Sure.
Good, because you got no choice. Here we go. Underrated versus overrated. All right. Do you know how to play this game, Angelo?
I think so.
Okay, wonderful. There's only two rules. One, I give you a topic. You tell me if it's overrated or underrated.
Okay.
Got that?
Yes.
Second rule, I tell you if you're right.
Okay.
Okay. and nobody's tracking my biases here. Okay, there's no data on this. All right, I can be completely unfair here. Okay, there's no culpability, transparency, or anything. Okay, all right, here we go. You ready?
Yes.
All right, good. Social media influencers.
I would say
Overrated or
they're
underrated?
overrated.
Overrated. You're breaking my heart, Angelo. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Now, why do you say that, Angelo?
Well, because you know the old cartoon or the old meme that said, "On the internet, no one knows you're a dog."
Okay.
There is someone hiding behind a camera and a smartphone or an iPad or whatever they use, creating an audience of followers. And the whole thing to me seems very sad that the followers are so willing to follow people they really don't know. And
are you saying I'm not this handsome in real life, Angelo?
Influencer community is good-hearted. Let's put it that way. So that's why I say it's overrated.
You know what? I love your rationale, and I think what you're saying is true. However, I'm going to disagree with you.
Go ahead.
Not because I have a dog in this fight, to use your analogy, to use your meme, but I think it's no different from spokespeople. So back in the day, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, right? We'd have spokespeople. We'd say, oh, try isotoner gloves, try Geritol, try, shaving cream, try, and that was fine. Famous people would pitch you products. And I think that's kind of just a new version of famous people.
So you're saying it's democratizing the phenomenon and letting more people in.
Yes, democratization is an excellent concept to apply to this, right? And here's another thing too. It used to be there was 5 television stations, or 4 or 3 or 2, depending on how far back you go, right? And how hard was it to get on TV? It was impossible, right? Just like getting on the silver screen. But now everybody has a TV show. You're on some sort of a kind of a TV show right now,
Right.
And I think we both agree, we don't necessarily have the face for TV, I mean, we wouldn't have made it back when there's 4 channels, Angelo. I mean, you've been out in Sunset City or for so long, or Studio City or wherever. And
I might have had a chance. We
all had a shot. We could have been a contender, you know what I mean? But we weren't, right? So, but no, so now we got a shot, right? Now we got a shot. Here we go. Anyway, no, I love it. It's great commentary here. All right, next, moving on. Avocado toast.
Oh, come on. Terribly overrated. I mean, what kind of a sandwich doesn't have a top to it?
An open-faced sandwich. An open-faced
sandwich. When you try to eat it, you get an upper gum of mushy avocado. I mean, I love guacamole, so I'm not against avocado per se, but the mushiness, and you have to eat it with a knife or else you're going to make a mess in your face. Overrated.
It's like a bagel with lox is an open-faced sandwich. You like a bagel with lox?
A knife and fork.
Yeah.
That's probably
pizza might be considered an open-faced sandwich.
That's true. You're getting me.
I should have been a lawyer. If I would have studied hard, if I wasn't doing all those keg stands in college, I could have been a lawyer. All right. Well, no, you know what? I'll give this one to you. Avocado sauce is overrated, but it's still good. It's just overrated. It's overrated. All right, let's go here. You're 1 for 1 here. All right, multi-shot espresso or espresso.
Underrated. It's my Italian Adderall. Just calms me right down.
What hour of the day do you stop drinking espresso?
It depends on if I go out to dinner. If I go out to dinner, it's at dinner. But if otherwise, I will have had my 4th quad espresso by 2:00.
4th quad, God bless. But if you go to dinner, you have a little espresso, maybe a doppio with a little bit of sambuca, maybe, or a little anisette or something.
A little limoncello on the side. That's not bad.
Okay. Little trivia question. I'm probably gonna get embarrassed. Why am I asking this guy trivia questions? Here I go. Lemon rind. It is customarily served with lemon rind. Do you know why a shot of espresso is served with lemon rind?
I'm not sure that it's customarily served in Italy with lemon rind. But
in Italy, he's going to pull the in Italy
take your
card.
Premise and say I don't know the reason.
All right, that's fair. Because it's to get the lipstick off the glass, off the cup. If there's still a remnant of lipstick, you wipe it right off with that. It's not actually
That's
to go in
interesting.
it.
I'm
Yeah.
going to check that one out after, and
You check that one out. You get
I'll
back to me.
email you if I disagree, because I didn't
What?
know that.
Email me either way because I want to gloat. All right, here we go. Number 4, Persian food, overrated or underrated?
Underrated. Persian food is a great repertoire of delicious dishes that most people don't know. I say this because my wife is Iranian. She's an American now, but she came from Iran, and the Persians love to party, and so I've eaten some great meals. Although there are a couple I don't really care for.
What is your favorite Persian dish? What do you like? Maybe we haven't heard of.
It's called tachin, and it is a yogurt infused saffron rice with chicken.
Ooh, sounds
and
great.
It has a crunchy tahdig on the top, which is the crusty part of the bottom of the rice pan when you turn it upside down.
Yeah, that's nice. That does sound great.
See, it's got a crusty top to it, unlike the avocado toast.
Yeah, you need the crusty stuff. You know what I find interesting? So when I lived in Detroit, people said to me, they said, well, what's the food? What is the Detroit food? I come to Detroit, what do I got to try? What's the official dish? I said, unless you want a really terrible hot dog or a really terrible slice of square pizza, honestly, the Middle Eastern food is exceptional.
Yeah. Go to Dearborn.
Oh, yeah. Dearborn with the fresh garlic sauce. I mean, don't breathe on anybody, but it's absolutely amazing. All right, here we go. Last one. Memory palaces or mind palaces if you watch Sherlock Holmes.
Underrated.
What is a memory palace, Angelo?
Well, it's a technique to try to remember a number of otherwise unrelated facts. And it can also be used with people's names. But if you are embarrassed when you forget something, look it up on perplexity.ai, which is my go-to AI resource now, and it'll tell you what that is. But basically, you imagine you're going through a palace, and in each room you leave 2 or 3 items, and that helps you to remember it as you retrace your steps.
True or false, Angelo? You will leave my name in the powder room.
Does it have white powder in the powder room?
You know what? It's your palace. Okay, your dime, your dance floor. Somebody told me one time.
Okay.
Let's see here. Non-Park saying these are some of the best answers. Yeah, this is great, Angelo. This has been a real pleasure.
I had a great time
to talk to you as well.
Can I mention my blog?
Please leave us with a final comment.
www.nationofimmigrators.com. And in it, I've been ranting similar to this show since 2004 on the dysfunctional immigration system in the U.S.
www.nationofimmigrators.
immigrators.com.
ORS. Okay. Nationofimmigrators.com. Angelo Paparelli, this has been phenomenal. Thank you for being here, sharing your amazing wisdom and insights with us.
I can't wait to meet you in person rather than in the powder room.
Yeah, don't leave me in the powder room too long. It'll smell. Hey, I'll be in California next week, Northern California, at the Bay Area Mobility Management Conference, the fall conference, BAM. We're also doing a truck pull for Move for Hunger. So come out, check that out on Wednesday of next week. And on Thursday, we will be at the fall conference broadcasting live. So 2 live shows next week in California, in the San Francisco area. Angelo, take care, and I'll see you later.
Thank you.